Ali for class. Thank you, and I've started recording.
Welcome everybody, and welcome back to another Michael's Community Classroom. My name is Ali W. I'm from Yarnspirations, and today we're here with Mary Beth Temple, and we have a fantastic class from our team here today covering some wonderful new embroidery products. So really excited to be here. If you have any questions throughout the class, for Mary Beth, please just feel free to drop them in the chat, and I will make sure that she gets through as many questions as we possibly can during today's class. Awesome.
Okay,
thanks over to you.
Thank you so much, guys. I'm Mary Beth Temple, and I love to teach here. I teach sewing and embroidery and knitting and crocheting because I'm one of those crazy people that does it all. So today we're going to talk about hand embroidery. And I promise I'm not going to turn it into an infomercial. We're going to learn about the basics of hand embroidery. But the first thing I want to do is go over the products that you want to purchase when you're planning your project. And the reason I want to do that is because if you get the right product, you will get a better result. So let's go to the tabletop camera, please, Kelly. And we'll get a little more light on the subject here. And we're going to talk about the things you need to do hand embroidery, and then we are going to talk about a couple of different stitches. And I'm sorry, I just kicked the camera. So here we are. So let's talk about a couple of different things. One of the most important things you're going to need is a needle. And you want to make sure that you have an embroidery needle, not a regular everyday sewing needle, for two reasons. One is you want to make sure that it has a big enough eye to fit your embroidery floss. And the other is you want to make sure it has a sharp, pointy point, because a tapestry or a yarn needle might be dull, and then that makes it harder to pierce the fabric. But if you use a regular sewing needle, you're not going to be able to get all your strands in there if you're working on a multi-strand project. So we have all kinds of embroidery needles for you to get, but do go ahead and spend the extra $2 and get an embroidery needle. Don't just use what's in grandma's butter cookie tin. The next thing I wanted to talk about was the differences between different types of fabrics. Now, these fabrics are all different, not just the color, but you can see how different the weave is. So when you're looking at the fabric on the wall at the Michaels, it's going to give you a count. And the count is going to tell you how many threads per inch. The bigger, I want to make sure I say this right. The bigger the number, the tighter the weave, and the more threads per inch. So just as an example, this is 11 count. This is pretty big. It works really well for, here, let me open it up a little bit. Works really well for cross stitch if you're doing cross stitch because you can see the holes. This is great for very beginner embroiderers. This is good for little kids to do. So this is an 11 count Aida, A-I-D-A. And one of the things that makes Aida, or some people call it Ada, what it is that it's even weave. If you get just regular fat quarter, it may not be evenly woven. And so your embroidery could be a little torqued, not so straight. So these fabrics are made very specifically that they're evenly spaced up and down, or warp and weft if you're into fabric construction. Now, this is a different color, but this is also an 18 count. No, this is a 14, pardon me. So we had 11. This is a 14. You can see the threads are closer together. The holes are a little smaller. You could still cross stitch on this, but it's going to be very detailed, which is kind of cool. And then if you look at this one, this is a 28 count. So I'm not going to cross stitch on this unless I'm very experienced, because it's going to be really hard to count those teeny tiny little threads. If I was an experienced embroiderer, I might do cross stitch on this, but I'm going to use this today just to do some embroidery on. And I also have a denim jacket that I'm going to do some embroidery on, so we can talk about the different ways to work. So those are some of the fabric choices, not all of them, but some of the fabric choices, just to give you an idea what you might like to practice on. The next thing I'm going to need is an embroidery hoop. And we use these to make sure that the fabric that we're working on, now it'll be a little different later when I put some buttonhole stitch on my jeans, because my jeans are already pretty stiff. But I want the fabric to be taut and tight so that my stitching doesn't pull in. When I take it, when I'm finished with it, I don't want it to pucker up or look unattractive. So having it in a hoop is going to be a much better choice. Anytime you can use a hoop, do it. Working freehand sometimes gives you a not as nice finish because the fabric can move, it can shift, it can pucker up, etc. And then the last thing I want to talk about from products, and these are new to Michaels, which is why I'm so excited about them. And I know you think that I'm saying it, I'm excited because I'm paid to be here, but honestly, I think these guys are a game changer. I really enjoy embroidery personally. I do a lot of cosplays with embroidery on them, and I'm so obsessed with these products. And these are the first ones that I've had in my hand. So this is Anchor Floss, which is cotton floss. It's a brand that's been around for a very long time. It's a 6-strand. However, it's on these spools as opposed to in skeins, which is sort of the older packaging. And problems with skeins are sometimes they get mixed up at the store. Some little 4-year-old went and mixed them all up. So that can be really frustrating. They get tangled very easily. And my other problem with them, if I say I have to go buy one of those cases with the cardboard on them and I wind my floss on them, if I don't remember the instant I get the skein to write the color number on there, I'm going to forget what it is. So the other thing I like about these is that they have the color number in enormous letters for my blind self. And that will be right here for me to see. So I feel like when I purchase more of these, I can keep them longer. I can use every inch of them. They're not going to tangle. I'm not going to forget what color it is. And I'm really very excited about these. And these are literally the first ones I've had in my hands. So I'm excited to share them with you today. So this is a 10 meter or 10.9 yard spool. And we have more than 200 colors in its handy dandy little display case. But for those of you who do a lot of embroidery like I do and need a lot of one color, we do have 20 colors that have 30 meters, which is 32.8 yards on the big strand, on the big spool. So if it's a color you're going to use a lot of, like right now I'm putting embroidery on a Rapunzel cosplay, this turquoise, I'm using the heck out of it. I use a lot of it. So for me, having this 30-meter spool is terrific. Again, I'm not going to lose it. I'm not going to misplace it. I'm not going to forget what color it is. It's not going to tangle up, and therefore I'm not going to have any waste. So again, at the risk of sounding like infomercial Nancy, I'm really excited about these spools, and I'm happy to show them to you. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take some fabric and put it in my embroidery hoop. Let me find some scissors. You want your fabric to be larger than the size of the hoop. So it's finding a line between being wasteful and making yourself crazy. So I'm going to cut it about here, I think. One of the other cool things about even weave fabric, although I'm being sloppy right now because I'm at a weird angle because I'm teaching on camera, it's really easy to cut straight lines. You just pick a thread and cut along it and you've got a straight line. All right, let me move some of my nonsense out of the way. So to prep my hoop, the first thing I'm going to unscrew it. Remember, righty-tighty, lefty-loosey, which I learned in scene shop in college and have never forgotten. But I'm going to make that loose so I can pop the center out. Then I'm going to take my fabric and lay it over the inner ring of the hoop. I'm going to pop this again. Now these are plastic. I got overexcited and knocked my little cover off. These are just rubber covers to make sure that the screw doesn't get caught on anything or that it doesn't undo too much. So I want to put my outer ring around. Okay. You can tell that I don't normally do it at this angle. It's really not as hard as I'm making it look today. Now, a couple things that you want to give it a good tug to make sure, again, that that fiber is tight. But the other thing I want you to pay attention to, so in putting this in, I made it twist a little bit. See how it's no longer straight? So if that happens to you, you're just going to keep tugging until those lines are straight up and down and straight across. Spend the time to make sure that your fabric is hooped correctly, because you don't want to put a ton of effort in to do embroidery and then not be happy with the result. So you want to straighten that out as much as you can. When you are satisfied, it's tight as a drum. You want to make sure that the inside and the outside line up. You don't want it too much on the top or the bottom. You want to line that up as best you can. And then I'm going to tighten that screw. Remember, righty tighty, lefty loosey. So I'm going to turn it right. And I'm going to keep going until I can't turn it anymore, because that additional pressure is going to keep the fabric where I want it to be. So now that's super tightly in there. So the first thing I'm going to do is this laced running stitch. And the reason I'm doing that first is the running stitch is a very, very common stitch. It's one of the first stitches a lot of people learn. And we teach it in the hand sewing class too. So here is my embroidery needle. And I have pre-threaded it with all 6 strands, because the anchor floss is 6 strands. Now, later on today, we're going to talk a little bit about splitting the strands. But for right now, I want a big, thick running stitch that you can see, that I can do some work in later. And let's talk about doing a knot. What I like to do is take this little cut end. Whoop, there we go. See how I'm holding it over my finger? And then I'm going to make that little loop. And then I'm just going to twist, 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 twist. And what's going to happen is that very cut end, that very little short cut end, is going to go in that loop several times and make a big, tight knot that I can use. Now, again, for sheer fabrics like this, maybe I don't want to see the knot. There are certainly other ways to do it. But for today, when we're all just learning, I'm going to go ahead and do my knot like that. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to do a running stitch. So I'm coming up from the bottom. And then I'm going down, maybe 1/4 to 3/8 of an inch. Now, if I'm using that bigger thread, I could count. I could go down every 2 or 3 boxes or whatever I wanted to do. But if I'm not doing that kind of, if I don't have that kind of fabric, or I'm just using, maybe I'm putting embroidery on a pair of jeans or my shirt, I want to more or less get the stitches the same length, you know, give or take. Nobody's going to come. There are no embroidery police. They're not going to come after you with a ruler. Now, in the hand sewing class, we talk about scooping and picking up a bunch of stitches at a time, but you're not going to want to do that on fabric that is hooped, because you want to keep the tension in there. So I'm coming up from the back and going down maybe 1/4 to 1/8 of an inch, or 1/4 to 3/8 of an inch away, and going back down. This is very relaxing. It's very, if you're on TikTok, it's a lot like an ASMR video. It's very, very simple, and it is the first stitch that most people learn. And the other thing about running stitch, before we get to the laced part, it's the same on the front and the back. So running stitch is also something we use it for visible mending, and we use it in situations where maybe both sides of the work are going to show. So I want to put a few more running stitches on here so we can talk about the next step. Allie, do we have any questions while I'm getting in my running stitch zone?
No questions at the moment.
Oh, see, I'm the best teacher ever. You're all getting it. I'm just joking. It's very mesmerizing, I feel like, doing this running stitch. Let me just put a couple more on and then we'll talk about the next step. And we do have other stitches we're going to do today. So there are hundreds of embroidery stitches. So you needn't worry ever about running out of new things to do. And small projects like this are really portable. And as I mentioned in my intro, I'm a knitter and a crocheter, but I'm less interested in knitting a blanket in the summer, particularly since I live down south. I noticed earlier we have a lot of people from South Carolina. I'm in North Carolina, and I don't want a big crocheted woolen blanket on my lap. So I love doing projects like this that keep my hands busy, but are not going to make me any warmer than I need to be. Let's talk about ending off a thread. This is more of an art than a science, but there's a couple things. One is you can go back under. Now, if I was doing a pair of jeans, and we'll talk about that later, and I could hide a few tack stitches wherein I pick up a couple threads over and over and over to make sure that it doesn't come undone, that I would do that. But on something like this where I don't want it to show, I may just weave it in and out a couple times out of the existing threads. You want to make sure that you're not pulling too tight. You don't want to pull anything out of sync. But I might just run my extra stitches back through the stitches I already have. Oops, I made a mess. There we go. So I wouldn't necessarily have made a tangle like I just did there, but the joys of live teaching. Now, the other conversation we have a lot in the hand sewing class, which I think is interesting, a lot of us in the world, when we were learning to sew or learning to embroider, we were taught to go as close as possible to that knot and cut the thread. But I actually like to leave a little bit. And the reasoning behind that is this: only if it's not going to show, honestly, only if it's not going to show. But if I cut that super, super close, then that end does not have very far to pull out of the loop. It can pull out of the loop really easily. If I give it another 1/8 of an inch, then it's going to have to work harder to come undone, if that makes sense. So in instances where I can, I like to leave that little bit of extra when I cut a knot. So there's my running stitch. That's the first stitch that we learned. And then that is the basis for this lace running stitch, which we're going to do next. Now, another thing I want to talk about with this thread, without getting too complicated, you don't always have to use all 6 strands at the same time. So I'm just going to cut a little piece off because, again, I have pre-threaded my needles in the interest of time. But if I wanted a finer line, which I do right now just out of interest, I can. So each one of these 6 strands is called a ply. And we keep talking about it, a 6-strand floss. Here is 1, 2, let's see, 3. Well, there's 3 in the middle, 4, 5, 6. So if I'm doing my embroidery and I don't want the embroidery to be that dense, I don't want to see that much of the line, I could use any number of strands between 1 and 5. I don't have to use all 6 at the same time. So what I'm going to do is for this particular project, I'm going to split so that I have 3. I'm going to work with 3 strands for my lacing instead of 6. So you can see I split it. So I have my 3 on one side, I have my 3 on the other side, and I'm running my finger between. I know from experience, it's going to twist. It really wants to twist. So it will twist less because I have just this little strand right here. But you have to let it untwist, because if you don't, it's just going to twist back on itself and tangle. So it looks super easy here because I only cut a very short piece because I wanted to show it all on camera. But if you pull off, normally when I embroider, I pull off maybe 24 to 30 inches because, again, I'm experienced at it, so I don't mind having a longer strand. But if you are separating a longer strand, give yourself some time, really let it untwist and go slowly. If you pull it, it's going to tangle and you're going to be unhappy. So once again, you can get needle threaders at Michael's, and I often use them. And I broke my last one when I was setting up for this class. So I don't have a needle threader with me today. So I went ahead and I pre-threaded my needles, but we do have those they're little metal and they have wires on them, and you poke the wire through the needle, put the thread through the wire, pull the whole thing back. It makes them thread much more easily. And I use them for not just embroidery, I use them for hand sewing as well. But I literally broke my last one right before the camera turned on. So we're not going to do that today. So let's talk about lacing this. I'm trying to decide where I want to start my thread. I think I'm going to start it here. So once again, I have already tied a knot. I'm going to pull it up. If you get these little twisty tangles like I just did, sometimes if you just go boop like that and pull the 2 sides, they'll come undone. You do want to try to not make additional knots. Oh, and somebody always asks this. I don't recommend using wax or any other kind of treatment on embroidery floss like I might do with all-purpose thread, just because I think it makes the project not as nice and it makes it sort of gunky. So all I'm going to do now is I'm going to go under. Let's see if we can come a little closer. I'm going to go under the running stitch that I already made and pull it through. Now, I do not want to make this super tight, because if I make it super tight, it's just going to look like 2 twisted things on top of each other. And I really want this sort of squiggle line going here that we have on these cute jeans. So I went bottom up on that one. Now I'm going top down. So let's see. I'm going between the embroidery floss and the fabric. I'm not going through the fabric. And again, I want to keep this pretty loose. It's one of those things, like I said, it's more art than science. You will get the hang of it as you practice more, but you want to find a nice tension between, I don't want to pull it so tight that I'm pulling my fabric out of whack, but I don't want to make it so loose that it looks sloppy. And remember, I'm not going through the fabric through this. I'm threading it or lacing it through the running stitches that we made earlier. The other thing I want to point out to you, let's see if I can get a good visual. Because I split my strands, I want you to see how much finer my turquoise is than my green, because my green is all 6 strands and my turquoise here is only 3. You can do embroidery with 1 strand if you want a really fine, delicate look. And again, you can see I'm kind of going in with my finger and giving it a little bit of looseness, just because if I pull it straight, it's going to look different. Now, you know what? I think at the end I'll pull it straight just to see how that looks, because that might be pretty cool too. Oops. So there is my laced running stitch. You can see it here on the jeans, but just out of curiosity, I think if I pull it tight, I'm just going to get a barber pole, but let's do it and find out. So different from what I had on the jeans, but also pretty cool. And it gave me this two-tone strand. So that's also something pretty cool that I might want to do. And again, if I was finished at this point, I would go ahead and end it off, but I'm going to move on because there's a couple more things I want to show you. I want to show you how to do a French knot, which is very, very common, but I'm going to do that with the bigger strand of yarn so it's easier to see. So I'm going back to my green because that's all 6 strands. And once again, there's my little cut end right up by my finger, my little loop, and then a twist. I used to avoid French knots like the plague because I couldn't do them for the I'm honest, I couldn't do them for the longest time. And then I took a silk ribbon class and I got the hang of it. And the trick to French knots is to keep the knot as close to the fabric as it can be. If you don't keep a handle on where that knot's going to go, it's going to knot 2 inches from your fabric and it's going to look a mess. So all the times in our embroidery, we've been trying not to make a knot, and this time we are. So you can see I'm putting it under the strand and I'm holding it down with my left thumb and I'm pulling it through the loop, which is going to make a knot. But do you see how I'm not letting that go? Because once you let it go and it gets away from you, it's all over. Ask me how I know. I used to get so frustrated by these. So now I'm holding it as tight as I can at a very strange angle because of the camera. There's my knot. And I'm going to go down in the next strand. Some will tell you to go back in the same hole that you came out of, and you can do that as well. But again, I find that if I go into the next one over, I get a little more height, which is what I want with a French knot. I want it to pop up. See? And there it is. And now I'm going to mess one up so you can see what I'm talking about. Most things with embroidery do look better when they're a little looser. So if I let this go, a couple things are going to happen. One, here's my knot. It's too far away from the fabric. So when I go back down, it's just going to hang out and not be attractive. And the other thing that's really easy to do with French knots is to pull it too tight, and then it looks like nothing. So if I take this one back down, see, that's not going to be pretty. It's just a loop because my knot is too tight and it was too far away from the fabric. So let's do one more pretty one. I'm going to come up from the back. Go under that strand. I'm holding that strand down with my left thumb. I'm pulling it up through the loop. And I'm keeping that knot as close to the fabric as I can get it, because I do not want it taking off into space and being too far away. So there's my nice soft knot. It's not too tight. It's right on top of the fabric. It's not any farther away. And then I'm going to take my needle down to the back Again, you can go down in the same space. Some instructions will tell you like that. I like to go a little bit to the right or the left again, just to give it some depth. And I'm not pulling super tight. I want it to be up against the fabric, but not making a big mess. And again, I would recommend, if you're learning these, do what I did, go up to 6 strands of floss. Don't try and learn this on one strand, because it's hard to see what's going on if you've only got one strand. And like I said, I literally took a silk ribbon embroidery class and I learned on silk ribbon, which is of course much thicker than this. And then once I got the hang of it, I found it easier to do in embroidery floss. So do not try and be a hero. Learn this on a thicker strand of product. And then once you get the hang of it, you can be more delicate with it. The number of French knots on my Rapunzel cosplay is staggering. I'm just saying. Okay, and there's another one. So this is the one I didn't like, because it's just a loop hanging up here and this little knot over here. But these are my pretty ones. Holly, do we have any questions before I move on to another stitch?
But there was a question here about why is it called a lace stitch?
Oh, because you are lacing the thread through an existing stitch. That's why it's a laced stitch. You will also, in some books, will see it called a threaded stitch. But what it means is there's an existing stitch, and then you are threading or lacing the second color through the existing stitch. Does that make sense?
Fantastic. And Gail here says it's great to see how not to do a French knot, as she's seen it done incorrectly many times.
Well, and that's the thing. I'm obsessed with them now that I know how to do them, but I didn't know how to do them right for years. I could never get the hang of it. And once that ribbon teacher taught me to keep my thumbnail there, it was like all of a sudden they're my favorite stitch. Just briefly, let's see, what else do I have? I have so many things I want to teach you. I'm just going to keep talking until we run out of time. Okay, I'm sorry, I'm thinking. I'm going to just very briefly talk about the difference between a laced stitch and a couched stitch. So for the laced stitch or the threaded stitch, we made our stitches and then we threaded through it. There's another variation on this called couching, in which you run just one big strand, usually of your thicker, whatever you have that's thicker. I use couching a lot if I want to use a metallic or a multicolored or a novelty thread, something that's big and fancy. I will often couch it, because if you have something like a metallic or a novelty, you don't want to bring it in and out of the fabric 87 times, because that takes some of the novelty away. It's not good for the thread. So in this is a couching. So I have one big strand, and then I'm going to bring the thread that I am couching it with up from the back and over. You will find a lot of couching in antique tapestries and antique fabrics, because the metallic fiber was so expensive and so rare, and you had to be so careful with it. You'll find it couched because the other thing is the tapestry wore away or got destroyed with age or was in a fire or whatever. You can clip the couching threads and pull the more valuable gold thread off and reuse it. A lot of the reason we think historical pieces are dull is because the more expensive products like the gold or the lace, they were pillaged off one piece and put on a new piece. You might have a lace collar or gold couching threads on 3 or 4 different dresses or tapestries or pillows or wall hangings or whatever. Because why would you buy more if you had a perfectly good one. So this is a couched stitch. So again, you can see that the green, my thick one, is laying right on top of the fabric, and I'm using the 3-strand. And again, for couching, I would go 2 strands or 1 strand, because I don't want to see the couching thread. I want to see the beautiful thread that I'm couching down. But then I'm basically holding that into place with additional embroidery stitches. So that's the difference between laced and couched. And that was probably way more information than you wanted, but that's what happens when you ask me questions. I get carried away. The next stitch I want to talk about is the chain stitch. We used it here. This is sort of a visible mending application right here. You can see the chain stitch, and also you can see the running stitch. The running stitch that was the very first thing that we did. And then there's some chain stitch going on down here. So let's take a look at that. I have two needles and 2 threads going here. I want to make sure that I'm not all tangled up. I'm going to just jump over here. So you're going to start by coming up from the back. You're going to use that left thumb to hold a loop of the fiber up. And you're going back in the same hole if you can manage it. And if you can't get it in the exact same hole, put it in the one as close as you can. So here's my loop. So I'm pulling through this very slowly. I don't want it to disappear. I want that loop to stay on the top of my fabric. So now I'm bringing my needle up. Let's see if you can see that. However big you want your chain stitch to be. It can be a 1/2 inch, 1/4 inch, 3/8 of an inch. And I want to catch that loop before I lose it. I don't want it to disappear. Now I'm going to give it a little tug. Again, I want to keep it relatively loose. If I give it a big tight tug, it's not going to be pretty. But I do want to give it enough of a tug that it's laying up against the fabric and not sticking off into the ether. So once again, I'm going to use my left thumb to hold that loop on top. And I'm going to insert my needle as close to the original spot as I can possibly get it. If I can get it back in the same hole, that's optimal. But if I can't get it back in the same hole, I want it to go as close as possible. Once again, I want to hold on to that loop until I've caught it with the needle. I do not want it to pull out. Now, the good news is if you hate this, you've done it, you don't like it, it is really easy to pull out. And if you crochet, it very much is, it functions like a chain stitch in crochet. Now, I don't have to go in a straight line for this. If I wanted to make a different kind of a line, if I wanted to do a wavy line, I could do that. So the way to make this chain stitch look really nice and delicate is to try as much as humanly possible to get your loops to be about the same size. Nobody's perfect. These are not perfect, but if you can get them pretty close to the same size, it's going to make your work look very neat and very detailed. Excuse me 1 second, I have to take a sip of water here. Okay, so see what I just did? I got caught on that and I pulled it too much. I can just use my finger and pull the loop up. I did that when I was putting my water down. And again, this is fun. If you look at this visible mending that we did, it went back over itself. It went in a big loop. Chain stitch is fun if you're doing, you know, like a live, laugh, love kind of thing. If you want to do a word, you can mark your line down with pencil or a transfer pencil. And chain stitch is very fun to do some cursive writing with. Not that anybody reads cursive anymore, but you know what I mean. And then the shorter your chains are, of course, the more delicate you can be with your curving. Allie, do we have any questions? Everybody's so quiet today.
I don't think any questions right yet.
Oh my goodness. I hope that means you're all fascinated and not bored to death.
I think fascination is definitely the answer. Kathy
Now,
wants to know,
go ahead.
wouldn't the stitch just come out when you go back in through the same hole?
Hang on, and let's talk about that. That's a really good question. It's not okay. When you're going in and out of the same hole, it's on one loop. So it's the beginning of a loop and the end of the same loop. So I'm going to really do it. If I didn't hold on to that loop, look what's going to happen. It will absolutely come out. All right. But that's why I'm using my thumb to hold that loop in place, because I don't want it to come out. And then it's not going to come out later because the floss that I'm pulling through right here, that's going to hold it in place. Do one more stitch. Now, when I'm done with my chain stitch, however wonky it may be, because I just was pretty random. When I come up, so when I have my last loop where I wanted, I'm going to come up. And I'm going to make sure I'm catching the top of that loop, and I'm going to go right down, again, either in the same space or very close to it. And now it won't unravel. So that's how I'm going to finish off my chain. Wherever my chain happens to end, that's where I'm going to end that off. And again, I would knot that off in the back, but I want to keep going because I have 2 more stitches I want to show you. Do we have any questions here, Allie, before I move on?
One question here, is the chain stitch the same as the lazy daisy?
I'm doing lazy daisy next.
Awesome. Amazing.
So I have a cunning plan.
Perfect.
So let me move on to that. To me, if you understand how the chain stitch works, then making the lazy daisy is so much easier. So, as whoever asked that question so cleverly noted, the lazy daisy is a variation on the chain stitch. So I'm going to come up where I want the center of my flower or my daisy to be. All right, I gotta. As you use up your strand of floss, you do occasionally have to give it a tug and make that second side a little shorter so it doesn't get in your way. So I'm going to make a loop like I did for the chain stitch. And then I'm going to make my petal by ending it off the same way that I just did my end off on my chain stitch. I'm going to come back at the top of the loop and go down in the next strand or the same strand and end it off. So there is my first petal of my flower. Now I'm going to keep doing that over and over and over for however many petals I want. I'm going to come back in the center. Oops, I got a little tangled here. My blue got in the way. Make another loop. Go back in the same spot. Now, if you have 7 petals on your flower, obviously you're not going to be able to go in the same hole over and over and over again. So just pick a couple of holes that are pretty close to each other and use those, but you want to keep going back to the center. Every time you form a new petal, you want to go back to the center. Traditionally, Lazy Daisy has an odd number of petals, but there are no embroidery police, so you can put however many petals you want, but it's usually 5, 7, or 9. So now I have 2. Going back to the center. Back to the center. Again, coming up to where I want my loop to end, where the top of that loop's going to be. And finish it off the way I finished off my chain stitch. Again, I'm not pulling this super tight, because if I pull it super tight, it's not going to have any flow. It's not going to look floral. It's going to look, you know, like something else. Basically, it's not going to be, it's not going to look like a petal. It's going to be too tight. But as you experiment, you'll find the line between too loose, because you don't want it sticking up so it gets caught on other things, particularly if you're doing something like our little jeans sample here. I got a little twist here, but it's just twisted. There's nothing wrong with it. It's not a knot. It just gets twisted up sometimes. Well, let's see. I want my petal to end here. So let me catch it. There we go. Now, sometimes when you're getting near, when your thread's getting a little shorter like mine is, and you can see how it's twisting up, sometimes what I like to do, let's make sure I caught that. I'm going to do that again because I don't feel like I got a good catch there. So when I see that kind of thing happening and I have too much twist, I'm literally, I don't know how much of it you're going to see on camera because of what you can see here, but I'm literally going to hold my work up and just let it untwist. You see, it's doing it all by itself. It knows how much twist it wants to have. And sometimes I'll separate the short end from the straight end and just pull it up and let it untangle. And then it's less likely to twist as I'm stitching. So let me get one more petal in here. I think I'm going to put it over here. That blue strand really wants me to work with it again. There's my little daisy. Again, I would have been a little neater if I was actually doing this on a project. And once again, well, let's go to the blue. Why not? Usually the Lazy Daisy is finished with 3 French knots, and we already went over how to do that. So I might come right up in the middle and do my French knot. But that's tradition. You don't have to. Again, I promise you, there are no embroidery police. Nobody's going to come and get you if you don't do things the exact same way every time. But traditionally, Lazy Daisy has a French knot or 3 in the center, and that's just to cover up where we kept coming up and going down in that same spot over and over again. Sometimes it can pull out of you know, it can get a little stretched out. So if you put a bunch of French knots in here, it's prettier and it looks more floral. Ali, do we have any more questions? I have one more thing I wanted to talk about.
There's a question here about how to make the backside of your embroidery look okay. There was a question, somebody's embroidering a jean jacket, so they want to make sure that the inside looks all right as well.
I have to be 100% honest here. The back of this that I'm working on right now is a disaster because I never ended off my thread. I just went from one place to the other. If you look, hang on. If you look at this, for example, so this was our jeans that we were using for a sample. What the embroiderer did here is did the embroidery before they turned it up so that you can't see the wrong side on the wrong side. I have also been, and something like this, you're not going to see it. I have been known when a piece is done to just tack a square of fabric behind it to cover all that madness. You know, other than that, it simply is planning to make sure that you can go as far as you can without having to start new strands all the time. And but you can cover it with if you want. You can put a piece, you can baste a piece of fabric behind it. You can, I hate to say glue, but you can use an iron-on patch and iron that on. You can use heat and bond, something like that. You can fuse something onto the back. I generally don't. I am not somebody who uses a lot of glue related products on fabric because my background is on Broadway and film and television. And I always feel like, well, what if I need to change it for another actor? If I put fusible on it, I can't do that. But fusible behind the right side of your work would also be super cool. I know I don't usually answer the chat directly. I do see somebody asking about applique. That would also work. The trick there is going to be making sure that the stitches you use to applique are not visible on the right side of the work. So say, well, hang on, I actually have a jean jacket right here because we were going to do some buttonhole stitching on it. What I might do, say I put a piece of embroidery here. This is the yoke, this is the back yoke. So say I had some big embroidery nonsense going on here and I wanted to cover it. Instead of covering just the area where the embroidery is, I might cover the whole yoke. I might applique something on it, but so I can use those applique stitches on existing seams, right? I might do an applique piece that's this big so that I can use these seams. So the stitches that I take to adhere the applique are not showing through because I only want to see the embroidery on this side. I hope that made sense.
Yes.
All right, and then the last stitch I wanted to show you guys today, if I can remember how to do it, is the buttonhole stitch. If you look at something that you know, your jeans that you bought, your jacket you bought, your everything, you'll see a variation of the buttonhole stitch. It's very close together and it's literally called the buttonhole stitch because if you do it very small and very tightly when you cut to the inside of the buttonhole, then the buttonhole doesn't fray away. Here, let's do the collar. So if you spread out the buttonhole stitch though, then it is more of an embroidery stitch. So I came up, so I'm going to put buttonhole stitches along my collar. I'm sorry, I just realized the screen's very messy. So I'm coming up from the back and I'm going to decide how far apart I want them to be. My first one might look a little sloppy, but that's okay. So say I want to make them about 1/4 of an inch apart. I'm going down. Now, again, this first one's going to be a little sloppy. That's okay. And I'm bringing my thread from the back and I'm catching that loop. So it's loosey-goosey here. I'm going to put a catch stitch in that later to finish it off. But that first one's a little sloppy, and that's okay. But you do want to keep your finger here. You want it to be squared off like the rest of the stitches are going to be. You don't want it to be going straight from here to here because that's going to be too tight. So now I'm going to go down again, maybe a 1/4 inch away. And because I'm working on something with an existing edge, I'm not in the embroidery hoop right now for this particular project. I'm going to go ahead and make sure it's just under the loop that I'm making. So I don't have to do a second action. I'm using my needle to do all the work. And you see, because I made sure my needle was under, it's catching that loop. So I'm going to get my equally distant little rectangles all the way across. Now, some people, and you can do this if you are a person that needs symmetry and you want everything to be exactly the same width apart, you can go in there with a ruler and mark your dots. You don't have to go crazy about it because the dots are the only thing you have to mark. You don't have to worry about having a terrible amount of marking. So I'm going down and I'm bringing my needle up, making sure it's inside that loop. So I can make these farther apart. If I was doing an actual buttonhole, I would want them closer together. But this is a very common stitch to use on edgings on projects, and I like it a lot. And again, it's very versatile. I was hoping that the stitches that we showed today were stitches that you use a lot. There are hundreds and hundreds of embroidery stitches. But today was just to sort of get you in the mood to start experimenting, and especially to show you our cool anchor floss on spools, which I honestly think is a game changer. I think it's going to make embroidering your project so much easier and less wasteful. So go put embroidery on everything. I am about out of time. So I'm going to go back to the face camera and say goodbye. Kelly? So yeah, I'm just waving goodbye. Let me get the big light out of my face. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm really excited to see you. I'll be back in September. Who knows what I'm going to teach? There's always something, but we are very much enjoying bringing these embroidery and sewing classes. So thanks so much for hanging out, and you can see the replay, and I'm sure either Kelly or Allie has something nice to say on the way out. So I just want to say goodbye and thanks for joining us.
Perfect. Well, thank you everybody for joining us. And again, you can get this recording at the link that's been dropped into the class, michaels.com/past classes. And you can check out what future classes we have in store as well. Perfect. Thank you, everybody. Have a good one.
Bye-bye.